Hi folks, I'm Aleks U, and you, I can point to the mango. You are awesome. I've got 3 ready, ripe, ready to be eaten today for lunch, brunch, breakfast, whatever. We're gonna have mangoes. They are so delicious, but they smell amazing as well. And they help me get grounded. Like any smell, the reason I do it is the act of smell, or the process while the brain is processing what you're smelling. It's actually in the present moment, right? It's a shortcut to get yourself in the present moment. Let's do it again. Try it, and you see that while you do that, you cannot think. There's no way you can be thinking. Your mind stops, it anchors. The chatterbox, the monkey brain, even for 20 seconds it stops, and you feel present. And that's why I stop and smell the roses. Now the topic of today's video is why it feels like everything is against me. This is a topic that actually goes right down to the roots of your ego, of the ego, not your ego. You don't own the ego. We're all sick from that disease, the ego, all humans on this planet, pretty much without exceptions, or with very few exceptions, I should say. So let's get into the topic. Now, when I say when and why it feels like everything is against you, what I mean is not a person that is against you physically and is trying to do something to you, or a thing that's trying to do something to you physically, or something that is that you see with your eyes, right? What I mean here is the story in your mind that projects that you're constantly or it could be constantly under attack, that things are always against you. Life in general is always against you. It's a subtle at times, but at times very aggressive feeling of being separated, obviously, because you see yourself as a separate thing. The ego sees, actually, as far as the ego is concerned, it knows it's separate, right? And when you believe that you're the ego, you believe that you are a separate thing than everything else, right? And so one of the reasons and the ways the ego keeps being true for you is that it projects this feeling of constantly being up against everything, and everything is against you. Whatever life is for you, everything in life, the way you see it, is against you. And that's a feeling that is, the ego will project to you day in and day out from the moment you are awake, right? And it can be very subtle, hard to understand why I feel stressed or anxious or worried, right? It's not a thing that I can point, like for example, I have a deadline that I'm not going to achieve, or I owe something and I'm not going to be able to pay. Something that's, I can see why I'm anxious. This is the reason. But often it's without an apparent reason. It's because it's the state of the ego all the time, right? Even without the reason, it always feels like under threat. It's being under threat, right? Because it's a strong feeling, and it keeps it alive, and it projects it, right? It projects itself as constantly being threatened and everything against you. That means in life you have to suffer, struggle, work hard, work against, fight all odds, overcome the challenges, get up even when you're down. Like this kind of mentality and thoughts are around us. That's how we grow up, and it's accepted in life and in the social aspect, in the communities that we've built, that this is normal. Like you are separate, a separate being, but a thing, you can see yourself as separate, and you're up against life, right? And against all the odds, he made it, right? These are things we say in life. And so it's not surprising that we feel constantly uncomfortable, under stress, worried, anxious, because the individual that I believe I am in my mind has to project itself that way, has to be that way, has to live that way, exist that way, up against everything. Because the way it's being built mentally inside your mind, right, the self that you live by every day, has to fight for everything, struggle, succeed, work hard, be motivated, be strong, compete in class, in life. You have to be number one or in the top, right? So I think though, and so I think I'm giving the picture wide. Like you have to understand that it almost comes to a point where where it meets forgiveness, because that's another topic. Why forgiveness is the path to present moment and peace and joy, is because once you understand that, oh, well, that thing I think I am, that individual, that ego self that I've built, I understand why it feels the way it feels, right? And I buy that feeling as me, because it's logical to feel under threat when you see yourself separate, right? It makes sense. So forgiveness is then one step further, say, oh, I understand, I forgive myself, and even forgive yourself as the ego self. Thank you for trying. I now know why I've been suffering so much, and why the anxiousness and the stress. Because yes, from an ego point of view, that makes sense. You believe you're a separate thing. You have to struggle, you have to work hard, you have to fight, and you have to be worried that everything is up against you, right? Because you're a separate thing in a world where there's a lot of things, and every one of them can try to harm you in one way or another. So there's one forgiveness, is forgiving the ego of and almost, yeah, like kindly understanding and forgiving, but then also forgiving you for buying into the fact that you are that individual, that separate, weak, or like self that needs to fight constantly. Forgiving, and then come surfacing from that feeling and understanding that you're not a separate thing. You are connected to all. You are part of life, and that life isn't against you, and that life is much sweeter than what we see from the separate perception that we have. Always much sweeter, always much sweeter. That nothing in life is, when you wake up in the morning, is out to get you and to hurt you purposely, just for you, against you, right? There might be some circumstances where life becomes very uncomfortable and physically threatening. But even in those circumstances, you removing yourself from that situation and focusing on that fact is much more productive than being with the constant thought that you're threatened all the time from everything, always. Because that's how the ego sees it. And most of us are not in those situations, that immediate life-threatening situations that some people are going through, sadly, around the world, which is also the result from us humans living from a separate self, constantly trying to fight and take things from the other separate self, another, my neighbor, and other humans. So that's another story of how we end up there. But for you to understand, wait a minute, nobody's against me. I am experiencing these feelings purely from my own mind. It's the story, and it's the separate self that I believe that I am, that I live by, I live through, that feels that way. And the beauty of it is that even though during those feelings of anxiety, worry, stress, and you feel like everything is against you, everything is difficult, everything is challenging, why am I feeling this way? That doesn't make sense. It's not logical. What's the point of it? It's not fair. It's almost demotivating, right? This constantly feeling this way, and you may even feel like you've got no control of it. And I think that's one of the last things in the box, like the toolbox of the ego, making you feel hopeless. demotivating you that you can't, like, the feeling is that you can't change that. This horrible feelings of anxiety, worry, stress, overwhelmed, and so forth, depression, that they happen to you, those feelings and those thoughts, and therefore you cannot change them because they happen to you. It almost feels like they are outside to you. They happen to you, and you got no control over them. And so I think that's I can say that's kind of the last kick from the ego to you, and it's a strong one, because when you are feeling those feelings, it really feels that you can't do anything. It's very demotivating. It's very almost demotivating, depressing, because it feels like you're helpless. You can't. And so in that moment, for me to tell you or anyone who feels that way, or when I feel that way, forgive yourself and let your being surfaces and understands that is all a dream. I've been projecting this in my mind, and only I can accept that it is and let it go. And then what we call wake up, even though you are physically awake, like it seems like you are physically awake. You wake back and say, oh, okay, yes, life isn't that bad. It's much sweeter than I've been projecting. It isn't against me, and I can actually face what is happening and live it from the present moment, with its challenging moments sometimes, and with its blissful experiences, and make it all one present moment living experience, not from a point of fight and being separated and struggling and suffering, but from a point of feeling I am welcomed, I am cared. Life is not against me. Life surrounds me, hugs me and supports me at any step of the way, because you cannot be separate. You're breathing in it, you're eating from it, you're walking on it, you're touching it, and you're hugging it, and it hugs you. This visual separation that we see, and that's another point why the ego is separating, or the ego's belief that separated, it's so strongly validated, because we see, oh wait a minute, I'm a body, it's separated, this body and this mango and this computer, and then I can hear things outside of me, so I'm separate. I can smell, I can touch. So our feelings and sensations are supporting you and confirming the ego's point of view that you're separate and everything is external to you, and everything can harm you and attack you and take you things, right? At any time. But the reality is, and the sweet reality, whenever it is, and this is not, oh, you have to wake up tomorrow or right now. Whenever it happens and you realize, when you wake up and you realize that is, even though it's hard to believe right now, it's a dream, meaning you're illusion, not a dream. Illusion that you've been buying into, I've been buying into. Wait a minute, I am life, I am part of life, I am alive in life, I'm part of it, and life has never been against me. Life is me, I am life. And the vision and all the sensations I have are helping me experience myself with sometimes discomfortable, it can be uncomfortable, right? Not discomfortable, but uncomfortable feelings and experiences, but they are nevertheless present moment living experiences. The drama in your mind isn't necessary for you to experience them. They just strengthen the negativity, which often isn't the true. So forgiving yourself for going through it, especially when it's hitting your heart, and being kind to yourself and letting it carry, it's like letting the illusion carry through, focusing on them. And when you focus on them, more, you have a chance, a higher chance to become present. Because the moment you start focusing on them, even though it's uncomfortable and the feeling of, overwhelming anxiety and whatnot, they can feel really, really heavy. But when you focus on them, you bring awareness. And even if it takes a bit of time and effort, eventually you're gonna you're gonna be able to do this. And as here I am, I woke up from this horrible illusion. I'm present, alive, and life is kind to me, part of me, hugging me. And even for a moment, let us enjoy the feeling of that not everything is against you, that everything is with you, that everything supports you, that everything waits for you to wake up and say, here I am, and I'm ready to be one with life again. We passed the 15-minute mark. I know this topic is large when I say why everything feels against me. So we go in different areas, but it comes down to the ego will never see it itself otherwise. But you, my friend, who are everything, the being that you are is part of totality. It cannot be otherwise. You know the truth, and you know you're not separate. So even for a moment, if you are able to find yourself this present comfortable state where you go, I can be without this feeling of constant separated and anxious, scared being, and I can wake up and be a comfortable, loved, cared, secured being walking on this beautiful planet. Until next time, where we're gonna have another Mind Triumph video. Drop me a line if any topic you would like to share. But until then, I wholeheartedly wish for you to be as present as possible, and as joyful as possible, and as least egoful as possible. Less ego and a lot more joy. Bye.